Today I'm going to share how you can find your seasonal color palette based on the colors you use to make art or the colors in the art that you buy. First, I need to back it up and share a little bit about the color theory behind the seasonal color palettes. It's based on undertone, value, and intensity. So the undertone is whether a color is cool or warm, the value is whether the color is light or dark, and the intensity is whether it's soft or grayish or quite clear and bright. And when it comes to undertone, we're not talking about the warm being red, orange, and yellow, and cool being blue, green, and purple. Instead, we're looking at whether the color itself has a bluish tint to it or a yellow warm tint. The value is just how dark or light a color is, so how much black or white is added to a color, and intensity is how much gray is added to a color. So on the soft side, there's lots of gray, and on the clear side, they're bright. Then we get into the palettes, and so basically in each palette, the colors are sorted by similarities on the three areas of the color spectrum. So for spring colors, for example, they're all very warm, and they are kind of medium to light in depth, and in intensity, they're all very, very clear. So you can see all of these colors kind of go together, and someone who is an artist who likes all these bright colors, bright warm colors, might be in a spring palette. And if you're attracted to these colors, then you would probably be in the spring palette as well. And we go on like this from here. Now the thing is I really want you to know is that this isn't a fine science, and not everyone fits perfectly into these color palettes. It's better to kind of look at this, and why I think it's kind of cool to look at it from a general colors you're drawn to perspective, is that if we wanted to make a fine science out of this, it would really be 27 color palettes we'd be working with. Instead, we're working with 10. So not everyone fits perfectly into these palettes. And so instead, if you can look at the general feeling of each of these color palettes, it's a little bit easier to go with and a little bit less confusing in my opinion. But I will share that, for example, the autumn color palette is also on the warm side of things. And it is, from a value perspective, it is in the middle to the dark side. And we're looking at colors that are quite soft. So there's gray added. And these are like the colors of the autumn leaves, all of the colors that you would see during the fall season. That's what you're looking at here. And then in between the spring at the top and the autumn at the bottom, there's a palette called Warm. And so these colors are all warm. Their value tends to be sort of in the middle of light and dark. And they are also in the middle of clear and soft. So they have some gray added. They're not perfectly super bright, but they're not super soft either. And then beside on the bottom left, what I'm painting here is called Summer. Now it's a cool palette. It's on the cool undertone side. So it's very sort of bluey undertones. The value tends to be medium to light. And the intensity is soft, so it's a very gray palette. The summer palette is actually probably one of my least favorite palettes personally. I'm a spring palette, so I like the warm, bright colors. So when we get into the cool, soft colors, I'm not so fond of those colors. So if there's any that you're like, ooh, I really don't like those colors, then you can also know that that's probably not your seasonal palette. So the summer colors are the cool, and then in between the summer and autumn is a palette called Soft. Now, soft colors are exactly what they say. They're all very gray. They tend to have a lot of blues and greens in them, actually. The undertone is in the middle. It's in between warm and cool, so it's sort of a neutral undertone. The value tends to be sort of in the medium area as well, and the intensity, as I said, is very sort of gray. I actually love these colors a lot, and they also have a lot of blues and greens and just very sort of cozy feeling colors. I don't tend to paint with them a lot myself, but every once in a while I do. And then on the other side, on the top left, is the palette that's called Winter. And these colors are the primary colors. They're black and white and silver. And so they're very bright. The undertone is cool. The value is dark, deep, dark colors. And the intensity is clear and bright. And then in between summer and winter, summer at the bottom and winter at the top, there's a palette called Cool. Now the Cool palette is, as it says in undertone, it's on the cool side. In value, it's medium-ish and medium kind of to dark, I guess. And the intensity is also in the middle. So it's not super soft and grayed down, and it's not super bright either. So then in between winter at the top and spring at the top left and the top right is a palette called Clear. Now this palette sits in the undertone in the middle, so it's not warm or cool, it's more of a neutral. The value tends to be very dark, deep colors, and the intensity is very bright or clear. And so that's those colors. Some people might find these colors maybe obnoxious. There's a lot, like you can think of neon colors, but I really love them. Of course, I love bright colors, so I really love all those colors as well. These last two palettes are a little confusing. So between winter at the top left and autumn at the bottom right is a palette called Deep. And so I've done those on sort of either side of the middle square. And the Deep palette is another neutral undertone, so in the middle. The value is obviously very deep, dark colors, and the intensity is also in the middle. So they're not super bright and they're not super soft. So these colors I tend to find are really close to black. They're very dark, they're very deep, and people who are drawn to this color tend to wear a lot of black because they feel like no colors work for them. But when you're painting or looking at art, you might go for things that are sort of deep blues, deep purples, deep greens, deep browns, that kind of color palette. There's someone on YouTube that is this kind of artist. I will link to her account below. And then the opposite side of that, this is between spring and summer. Spring at the top right and summer at the bottom left is a palette called Light. And again, I have those on either side of the middle square. These colors tend towards a neutral undertone. Their value is very light and their intensity isn't really soft or clear. It's kind of in the middle as well. So if you're attracted to those kinds of colors, there's a chance that you might be a light seasonal palette as well. I want to stress again that this isn't a fine science. And so if you don't feel like there's certain colors that you're really drawn to within these sorts of palettes, look around at what you do have, because I know some people who get really wrapped up into finding the exact palette that suits them. And the thing is that it really doesn't matter if you know the exact thing to call yourself, like spring or autumn or summer. You just need to know which colors sort of light you up. And when you know those colors, then you can start wearing those colors and you'll find they'll all go together and you'll get all of the benefits of the seasonal color palette. So just look at the art that you have around and look at the art that you're drawn to and look at the art that you make and what colors do you use for those things, and you'll find those perfect colors for you.